And we are live. Well, welcome back to another JellyPod episode, guys. Today I'm here with Deezy, a fellow content creator. He's been in the space for years now, pretty much does live streams almost every single day, covering a lot of different market news. A lot of people know him for first being on with BitBoy a few years back before all the chaoticness had
I
had
had more
happened
hair
with
then.
that. And
Yeah, I had a better
hey, me
hairline back
too,
then.
me too.
Yeah, we got a
But
little
dude,
simpatico going on, don't we? Where's my
I know.
Where's
Where's
my
your
glasses?
Ray-Ban glasses?
I
You
look
get the
like
glasses,
Timu
man.
Tate. If I throw on shades, I look like Timu Tate. So that's sometimes I hesitate to do that.
Oh, dude, I know when Tate was like really popping off the first go around, I had so many people like call me because I wear like black t-shirts all the time too. So I feel like if you have a shaved head and a beard and wear black shirts, like you're just gonna get that comment all the time.
Yeah. Plus, we have that olive tone, thing going on.
Exactly, exactly. But dude, yeah, I mean, welcome to the podcast. Really awesome to be able to talk to another creator, especially someone who's been doing this forever. Man, like one of the things I like to start off with these is just getting to know you as a founder and creator. Like what was kind of your journey into Web3?
So it started back with me dropping out of uni for, I went back second time to get my accounting degree. I was like, all right, I'll be an accountant. I kind of have an affinity for numbers. When I was in high school, I was reading, the financial section of the newspaper. I was probably not that many people in my high school did that, So I didn't even really think like maybe I should kind of explore that path. But as I was studying accounting, I had a knack for it. All right, debits, credits, the whole system seemed pretty, all right, I get this. I like this. But then I read an article 2017 that it said basically AI is going to disrupt a lot of sectors, and a lot of it made sense to me. Trucking, okay, that makes perfect sense. A lot of software based things. But one of the things I saw that AI was going to disrupt was accounting. And I started to think about it. I was like, well, that doesn't really track well because, people don't know what to put in a spreadsheet. You still need that kind of person, that numbers person to be like, hey, put these numbers in the sheet. Tell me what it is. But it pointed at something different. You ever go, now this, you probably haven't seen it in a while. Did you ever go to a grocery store and you see what grocery store do you go to?
Dude, now that I'm in Vietnam, I don't go to grocery stores too much.
Ah,
But maybe
what
back
did
in the
you do in
States, like
America?
well, maybe like Publix or Harris Teeter or
Okay.
something like
Publix,
that.
Harris Teeter. Great example. Harris Teeter, especially.
Yeah.
Harris Teeter, you would see the person wearing the button up. It was still a Harris Teeter shirt, but they were dressed nicer than the cashiers. And they go up and down the aisles and they're like, all right, we have this many boxes of spaghetti. That's literally someone with an accounting degree. That's like kind of just stuck in some middle management hell. And they're like, yeah, no, that's going to be replaced by robots. And that's actually like a large driving force of employment in the accounting sector is things like that where they check inventory. And so I literally just abandoned accounting, just dropped out of
From that
school.
one article. You read one article and you're like, yeah, screw this.
It was coupled with something else, which was content creation. And I was a huge fan of Fortnite. But I was watching Twitch before Fortnite. And so I watched Twitch for Magic the Gathering. So, 2015, early days Twitch. I'm watching, fairly boring content creators, but I didn't know they were boring. They're the Twitch. They're on Twitch. They're the best one, this the top in the field, and I'm watching it. But then when Fortnite came out, we had Ninja, we had Hamlins, we had, TSM with Myth. And these people, we had Dr. Disrespect, and these people were leagues above in the content creation side. And I was like, where are all the, I feel like an idiot now watching these cool streamers. And then I would go back to Magic the Gathering, the trading card game, and it was the most boring thing in the world. And at the same time, Wizards of the Coast, which is the parent company, that's a
Mhm.
subsidiary of Hasbro, they had this huge digital content creation program that was started. They're going to fund and they're going to have tournaments and they're going to do all these things. And I fancied myself a little bit of a Magic the Gathering pro. And I was like, all right, this is perfect for me. I just totally gave up accounting and full ported into content creation around that 2017, 2018 range. And then probably 2 years after that, I made my first crypto content, which is also a trading card game. So it's like a little bit of a transition to a transition to a transition. And then I found myself streaming Magic the Gathering. I'm a Twitch streamer. I'm literally the world's number one Magic the Gathering TikTok creator. I got a fairly popular Twitch channel
Really?
as well. Well, back in 2020, it wasn't that hard to be number one in the world at something on TikTok in a micro niche. And, like the most competitive time slot. I'm a top 5 streamer. I'm like, this is the shit, man. I really digging what I'm doing here. But I fell in love with crypto and I would be streaming, hundreds, maybe 1,000 people. I'm like trying to make these like very high level decisions. Like it's almost like a chess match on steroids. And I'm like trying to think 3 turns ahead and what's in my hand, guessing what's in the opponent's hand. And while I'm doing that, I'm glancing over at my second screen, which has
At
trading view
Bitcoin.
open. And I'm looking at, and I'm trading Bitcoin, I'm trading ETH. And I said, man, I love crypto so much more than I love Magic the Gathering. When I get done streaming, I'm watching YouTube. I'm not watching Magic the Gathering. I'm watching crypto. And I just said it's time to make a pivot. And then I had an opportunity open up with BitBoy Crypto back in early 2021. And I've been doing it full time since. But first content started 2020, full time since 2021.
And do you still make any card sort of content or at least like play Magic, or you
I
pretty much
still
fully
play.
transitioned?
Yeah, I still play Magic, but man, I haven't made a Magic the Gathering video in probably 3-4 years, which it's a shame. I still love the game, but not to ruffle feathers. I didn't find myself aligned with them politically as early as 5 years ago. I could kind of see shifting goalposts. I grew up,
Mm.
voting for John Kerry and voting. I was just true blue. And I felt like my scene was like drifting in or turning into something else. And I found myself at odds with the Magic the Gathering community, and I found myself more aligned with the cryptocurrency community when it came to things like freedom of speech, etc.
Wow, that's interesting. And I am curious, the whole BitBoy thing. Like, how
Yeah.
did you end up meeting him and talking to him and having sort of a podcast? Like, walk me through what that experience was
It was
like.
actually trading card games. The CEO, TJ,
Really?
they signaled that they're interested in making an NFT based trading card game. And I said, hey, I reached out, I cold message. I said, I'm the world's top, Magic the Gathering TikTok creator. I'm one of the top content creators for this brand. I'm a pro. I have tournament finishes. Here's my bona fides. You can Google Nick Valdez, MTG, and you'll see some like 2015 tournaments and stuff like that. I was like, I can 1000% help you make this transition from idea stage to actual implementation to making a game. And so they're like, man, I love the idea. We have a meetup in about a month. Why don't you show up for the meetup, chat with us? And then, we just kind of hit it off. And they're like, man, we'd love for you to move out here and join the team. So that's what I did.
Wow. So where were they based again?
Atlanta. That's basically where I live now, Atlanta, Georgia.
Wow. Okay. So you went all the way to Atlanta. Well, it wasn't too crazy far, and you just kind of picked up content creation with them. And what was like kind of the day to day like?
So
The-
third day in, job totally changed. I felt that maybe they saw that there's a little more promise with the things I can do in the back end. So I started producing around the blockchain. So that was like within the first week, I had already pivoted and I started basically, writing the content, helping with questions, helping with the topics, and I did 100% of reaching out for the guests. So basically, I was the producer for the show. Come up with the title, come up with the ideas, and make sure the guests show up on time, and then hand the host, hey, here's your completed show, where they could just walk in a minute before we're live and everything would run smooth. So that was my job, and then I slowly transitioned into host from that.
Nice. And I'm curious. Okay, so you were super in depth into Magic, streaming that, making content on that. What about crypto was like so captivating to you where you sort of got obsessed about that? Because one thing I'll say, creating content is a lot of work. And I see you doing live streams and cutting up the videos and clips, and it is a ton of work. So you do have to like what you're doing to some degree to like be able to consistently do it for so long. What was kind of the draw to crypto? I know that you said the politicalness and stuff like that, you were feeling kind of a little alienated, but what about crypto did you like?
Well, one is the gains. Everybody who doesn't lead with gains is kind of lying. The reason we're all here is to get rich. If you say otherwise, you're a liar. You're a stinking liar. Now, maybe there's, Ross Ulbricht's cypherpunk friend from 12 years ago who's like all about, really solving a lot of issues with censorship. Sure, those people exist. But those people are probably devs or, learning cryptography or, probably have autism. 99.9% of people in crypto want to make money. And so let's just go ahead and get that out of the way. Obviously, I see, oh, Bitcoin goes up. I bought, it went up. I dabbled in silver years before. I remember debates with my buddy when Bitcoin was like $100 a coin. He's trying to tell me to buy Bitcoin. I'm trying to convince him to buy silver. And I did a lot of my research into silver manipulation in the 80s and looking at, the big banks. I should have done my research in the Federal Reserve. I should have done my research into, why'd the Titanic sink, which is, just a fun conspiracy, not anything I'm like, oh, this is definitely real. But I found myself loving the gains, obviously, but I also have always been a free speech absolutist. I had odd thoughts in middle school. I remember seeing Jewish lawyers of the ACL defending a neo-Nazi's right to protest in a street when they had their permit taken. And I just remember the juxtaposition of like, wow, these people who are like obviously these heinous Nazis, and yet a Jewish lawyer is like, free speech is that important to me. I remember being in, maybe it was high
Wow.
school, like just being captivated by that type of truly free thinking. And then you started seeing, Anarchist Cookbook and other things from like 10, 15, 20 years ago, where that was more the idea when you're talking about censorship, which is a lot different than today when now it's mostly big tech censorship. But I could see the inklings of the big tech censorship. And also, I was just getting ostracized from the Magic the Gathering community, which was based in the Pacific Northwest of the US, based in Seattle. And I found myself just feeling like an alien when I was like at these Magic the Gathering conventions or TwitchCon. I'm hanging out with these people and I found myself ostracized a lot.
Yeah, it makes sense. Man, that Jewish lawyer situation, that's pretty insane. I mean, what
Yeah.
a what a testament to that. And I agree with you. I think a lot of people are into crypto, for the gains, for making money. That's definitely what is the main thing that attracts a lot of people into the ecosystem in general, right? Is they see a meme coin blow up and then they're like, "Oh, I want to get involved in this." And I think over time, you have those different values that come in a little bit more into play, like freedom of speech and stuff like that. Now, when it came into your journey with crypto, I know right now you mostly cover Cardano. I see you cover XRP a decent amount, Bitcoin. Are these sort of the three main like tokens that sort of gravitated to you, or what was
No,
kind of
I
your
mean,
journey with that?
XRP is a meme coin. No, I don't want to say that. I am not like a bull on XRP as far as XRP is going to overtake the entire banking system. And when you look at the assets on chain, it's going to be $500. No, that's obviously fugazi. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
You have Jed McCaleb and Ripple Labs just dumping and dumping and dumping. But XRP has a very strong community, and I think there is a argument for remittance payments being, a value add. And I think the Ripple RLUSD, XRP's stablecoin being brought on Cardano, I think there's a lot of benefit with that. So I'm not just trying to crap all over XRP, but I would say to me, some of the main chains, it's got to be, if I had to choose three, obviously Bitcoin. I would choose Cardano mostly out of biases. I would choose it over Solana, but then you still have to include Ethereum in these conversations, even though the price action is weak, even though L2s are extracting value, even though the meme coin ecosystem has basically left that entire chain. Wall Street still loves Ethereum. It's still, a very long time without any downtime. ETH Classic fork, that was a long time ago. I think people are going to respect that. And, they're going to see Solana having downtime. That's going to be a red flag. They're going to see Cardano maybe not has the dev community that Ethereum has. That's going to be a strike for Cardano. And Bitcoin, is just slow and boring, which Bitcoin also had bugs and, the value overflow incident of 2020, 2010. Bitcoin's gone down. Bitcoin has gone down. Cardano has not gone down. And so that's why, Cardano probably must include in that list as well.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what made you so biased with Cardano? Like, because I see a lot of your
Community.
contents around Cardano. Yeah, so it was mostly the community
Man,
that attracted you.
you know what project got me into Cardano? Like really, really liking Cardano?
Which one?
It's embarrassing. I almost don't want to say it. Boss Cats. You remember those?
Dude, okay, Boss Cats were, like, crazy hype at the time, though. I remember, like, it wa I got into Boss Cats as well at that time, like, especially I think it was January and February. They had gone from under 100 ADA all the way to, like, 2,000, 3,000 ADA, back when ADA was a couple bucks. I mean, that was the Rockets, I remember I had gotten a Rocket and sold it for, like, 25K or something nuts. But yeah,
Yeah, I sold
so
some
they got
rocket
you
parts,
in.
some
Like,
gold parts.
how did they pull you in?
Price action at the same thing. You know,
Yeah.
like, you get in at 200 and you show up the next day, it's 400. Guess what? You're all of a sudden a lot more interested than if you woke up the next day and it's down 10%. And so seeing that community made me a lot more bullish, but it was slow things as well. I remember talking to Tom Crown Crypto after him and Crypto Blood went to a Litecoin conference. And I had just left a crypto conference that was Cardano. So they just went to Litecoin. I just went to Cardano. I remember this was during the bear market. And I was like, man, what's the sentiment? They're like, ass. It was bad. You know, everyone's bearish. And I was like, man, even though it's bear market, even though Cardano's down, Cardano community is thrilled. They're all bullish. They're building. They're excited. And I just saw how the Cardano community is just a lot stronger, if not just totally stronger than every other community. And the fact that, you know, they don't really lose a poll. And you see smart people like Cardano Whale and Big Pay and, you know, Payton. You just see Charles Hoskinson. You see him speak in front of Congress, and then you see Vitalik speak in a podcast. You're like, oh, well, I think I know who I'd rather hang out with.
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. It's one of those things where, yeah, like I haven't been a chain maxi. I've been on a ton of different chains, probably 15, 20 different chains, have messed with their ecosystems. And it is crazy, even though maybe the volume isn't as high on Cardano as something like Solana, of course. You have way more people that are deeply connected on Cardano. I think a lot of founders know each other, they talk to each other, they'll help each other out. Even content creators like right now hit each other up. We made this happen. I think this happens a lot more on Cardano than other chains.
Yeah, 100%. And they're a lot more approachable. And part of it's because the lower market caps of a lot of these Cardano native tokens and Cardano NFT projects. But Claymates, you know, probably one of the largest things out there, or Berry, you know, from the Berries, and also Space Buds. You can go to a Cardano conference and just walk right up to them and talk to them and hang out with them. I don't feel like, you know, I have a mutant ape. When I went to Ape Fest, I didn't see the CEO. You know, I remember seeing one of the four founders like walking by real quickly with like a team of people, but they weren't just like hanging out and easily approachable. Now I know it's a lot of it's market cap, but just Cardano founders, generally speaking, just very approachable, very friendly, and just love the ecosystem.
And I'm curious, what do you think Cardano needs to improve on? Because it sounds like
Stablecoin.
you're stablecoin. That's the number one
Stablecoin,
thing.
stablecoin liquidity, stablecoin liquidity. They need a stablecoin that stays a dollar. The fact that Cardano doesn't have a stablecoin that can stay a dollar is frankly embarrassing. Wall Street
It's
is not going
mind
to want to
blowing.
touch Cardano with a 10-foot pole as long as they have a stablecoin that can't, you know, stay at a dollar. Oh, it's 97 cents and yesterday it was $1.02. It's fine. It's good enough. It ain't good enough for a lot of people.
So stablecoin, that's the number one. Do you think have you seen the USDH from Dex Hunter? Do you think that's an okay solution
Yeah,
or
there's still not the liquidity provide needed. It's still not the, you know, the
yeah.
liquidity depth. It's just it's not there. It still needs to be there. Honestly, we maybe should have pushed a little bit harder. I say we like I'm in IOHK or IOG. We, you know, maybe they should have pushed a little bit harder for Circle and Tether. And I understand the drawbacks, the ability to freeze, you know, and also the ability, you know, Charles Hoskin has a fear of they can kind of dictate governance and hard forks in the future. I don't see that as too much of a threat factor, and I'm pretty conspiratorially minded. You know, I don't think they would try to extract value. You know, the fear would be, you know, maybe ETH whale or Solana whale can kind of infiltrate that system and, you know, maybe push Cardano in the wrong direction. I think the community would be able to see that, suss it out, and then countervote that.
I agree on that. And if you were to add two more things to your list for Cardano, so you've got the stablecoin liquidity. What are two other things?
This is maybe not this is a little bit of a hot take. Man, it's hard to tell. You know, I'm kind of on the fence on this one. Charles being politically active can help and hurt. I think right now it's
Yeah.
helping. It might not be the case 4 years from now. Might not be. It certainly wasn't the case a year and a half from earlier, with the Gensler administration. So that's probably a net gain today, but it was a net negative a year and a half ago, and it might be a net negative 4 years from now. And so maybe that's something to think about. Although I typically find myself agreeing with Charles across the board. So that would be number two. And then number three, I would say it needs. I don't want to say it's almost bribery. We need to incentivize a lot of partnerships similar to what you saw with Polygon. Polygon Starbucks
Mm.
didn't amount to anything, but it definitely made the community excited and it definitely paved the way for something in the future. Starbucks kind of, famously partnered with Polygon for a customer appreciation loyalty program. Basically like come here 10 times, you get a free cup of coffee. We're going to use Polygon. Didn't amount to anything. But say Starbucks does a 180 and does want to do it 2 years from now, they already have the inroad with Polygon. And so I think using a lot of Cardano Foundation funds to wet the beak and grease the wheels of some of these large corporations would be beneficial. So we need to play the game. And so that's kind of number two and number three.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, even with Polygon, once again it didn't work out, but when they paid millions of dollars for Utes to come over from D gods into the Polygon ecosystem, and I do look at other chains where they have a lot more grants, they have a lot more foundations. They're actually helping projects and incubation programs and hackathons that they host. And I do feel like that is lacking a decent amount on Cardano. Like there isn't a lot of support or sort of greasing, so to speak, of getting other companies and projects
And,
interested in building here.
they would counter, well, that Starbucks can make a Cardano proposal, submit it, and the community gets a vote on it. But if you're Starbucks CFO or you're the
You're
Starbucks
not
board
doing
and you
all
got,
that.
all right, yeah, yeah, fill out these forms and then, make a proposal and put it online and then we'll vote on it versus this guy's knocking on the door, calling 10 times a week, begging us to work together, and he's going to throw us $20 million. Well, we got this option, we got this option. It's a clear choice for a corporation.
Yeah, and filling out milestones, like I can't even imagine corporations going.
Yeah, unless it's like an Elon company, it's probably not going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah. And I'm also curious here, like, what's your day to day look like? Like what? Because
Well, I
how are
wake
you
up at
staying up to
3 a.m.
date
and
on
I
everything?
put my face in a bowl of
And
ice
put your face
water,
in a bowl of ice.
red light therapy, and then I do the Alex Becker routine: red light, sauna, ice bath, 87 injections in my left buttock. I'm hanging upside down like a bat for 2 hours,
Of
and then I do
course.
crunches for 40 minutes. I don't do any of that. I wake up, get to the office, roughly 8 something, and then I'm just pouring into the stories. I have a little bit of a system where I can kind of look 5, 6 different kind of portals to find my news, see what's percolating to the top, see what's kind of the narrative of the day, and then try to make a narrative for the show. And then at the same time, think, how can I provide value? And so, first part of the day is mostly handling the live stream. During that process, probably 80% of the time, I have a good idea what video I need to do for that night. And the other 20% of the time, I'll just scramble after the live show. All right, so what's in the news? What's a big gainer? What's maybe the crypto sphere talking about? What coin is up the most in the top 100? Is there a video that can kind of circulate around that? And then after that, I get home and, I like to have my home life, I try not to stare at a phone, once I'm home, try to spend time with the missus, with the dogs. And I still play a little bit of Magic the Gathering. And right now, I got a
Nice.
wedding about a month and a half from now. So I'm trying to get a little extra exercise in too.
Oh, well, congratulations, man. That's exciting. Is
It's
she into
a
crypto as
humanoid
well?
robot. No, she hates
It's a
crypto.
human.
She hates, no,
Is she into crypto
zero
as well,
interest.
or she thinks you're crazy?
Zero interest. I don't think she thinks I'm crazy because, we just got a newer vehicle, our house is okay. We're able to pay for repairs if she wants to go, get her nails done, so like crypto's paying the bills. So who's paying your bills? You probably don't want to,
It
be too
probably isn't
critical.
too
Hey, it makes a little
crazy.
bit more sense. Yeah. It's not like some shitty unemployed boy, I excuse my language here, but it's not like some crappy unemployed boyfriend mooching off of her paycheck while I'm trying to trade meme coins on
Buying meme
Solana.
coins, yeah.
So it's a little bit different. And I think she's, definitely could see the value of Bitcoin at the end of the day. When I talk about like, well, here's why EUTXOs are superior, probably not going to be too interested in that conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know what's crazy as a content creator too? It takes a long time to research all of this different information that's flowing in the market to actually create that content. I mean, do you have any tips for content creators that are listening in on, how do you really optimize the content that you're researching? Yeah, I'm just curious on optimization standpoints.
Well, I have good basically portals of information that I use. You can kind of make your feed if you're using X often. You decide your feed by what you click on, and so I'm every day I'm putting book or all throughout the day, whether it's at night, afternoon, in the morning. I'm bookmarking important crypto news events, and so when I wake up in the morning and I pull up X, it's got a lot of that already algorithmically to the top of my feed. Also, I like to use news aggregator sites, and there's different ways you can kind of look at that, and there's some fairly good crypto publications. I think Cointelegraph is doing, a pretty bang up job. I think they're doing a pretty good job. And there's other people out there, even in the Cardano community, that are just fantastic at spreading news. I want to give a big shout out to Min Swap Intern. That guy's always putting out great
And
stuff. Cardano Whale, always putting out great stuff.
yeah, 100%, 100%. And going into back into the market a little bit here, do you believe that there's an altcoin sort of bull run happening in the near future? I've been talking to different people, and some people think it's going to happen. Some people think there isn't really going to be an altcoin run. I'm just kind of curious on your take on that, and if there's any specific coins or alts that you're looking at that you think could do well in that
Oh
case.
yeah. Oh yeah. I definitely got, I think, good altcoin picks for 2025. But the problem with the altcoin market is now it is just too diluted. And so, some examples I give, if you're not going to buy Bitcoin in 2020 and you open up Coinbase, you have like four other options. Now you have 400 other options. And so if you're like, well, I was going to put $100 into Bitcoin, now I'm going to put my $100 into one, divided by 400. And so as a net, the altcoin market still grows, but on a per coin basis, altcoin market barely did anything. And so what we're seeing here
Yeah.
is we do see the totals. We're seeing some of the altcoin market caps look okay, but when you look at the individual coins, you're like, oh man, it seems like ETH is well below what this Bitcoin altcoin chart should look at. You look at Bitcoin versus altcoins, you're like, okay. Then you look at Bitcoin versus ETH, and you're like, well, what the hell happened? Well, the L2s are extracting from Ethereum, and so we also have a more crowded L2 space. I mean, at the end of the day, Ethereum still number two, as of for now. But there weren't that many L2s 3 years ago. Now there's too many L2s. And so, same example as Coinbase. You're only going to put in 4 coins. Well, if you want to get an ETH L2, you're only going to put in 2 coins. And now you're looking today and you're like, there's two launched every week. And now I don't know which one to put money into. And so I do think there's going to be strong altcoins, but I think as a whole, we might not be able to expect those parabolic, oh, any coin in the top 50 is going to do a 10x, because there's just so many coins that are okay from rank 51 to 499. And that wasn't the case so much last cycle. As far as winners for 2025, I think in America, there's a clear strategy. I think that's, I hate to say follow the grift, but, look at what the Trump administration is doing and look where Trump is putting his money. So don't listen to what they're saying. Look at what they're doing. And you could do that on chain by checking World Liberty Fi's wallet. You can see what the hell they're buying. You can see who they're appointing, and you can see who's having meetings inside the White House. And so that kind of points to a handful of tokens. I think Charles Hoskinson, very strong chance he's going to be a strong winner. We just did that talk with World Liberty Fi founders and the president's son. That was like 2 days ago. And so there's a non-zero chance the Trump team is going to add Cardano to their balance sheet. And it's not just Ethereum coins in World Liberty Fi. They have Tron. They have some other ones as well. I think Tron might be the only one that's non-EVM, but they're holding non-Ethereum tokens. So if they're holding Tron, why wouldn't they hold Cardano, especially with Charles talking to his son? Also, with that, I think American-based DeFi is going to be well positioned. And so to me, I kind of think of two tokens in particular, Chainlink and Aave. I think they have a large enough presence where if there is a moat, BlackRock doesn't want everybody to be able to launch a DeFi protocol. you're probably going to need $1 billion to launch a DeFi protocol 2 years from now that's going to be regulatory compliant. Aave has that type of war chest. Link has that type of war chest. And so if the moats are raised behind the big players, which you see basically in every single industry ever, it's going to spell well for, a few DeFi projects.
Man, I really love that take. It is kind of insane with Liberty that they're just publicly announcing everything they're buying, and yeah, like you can see on chain too. Um, so, like on that list, which tokens have you been mostly interested in? Are you sort of just buying everything that they've been buying?
No, last token I bought was Aave. I bought a little Aave. I just bought one. I just bought an Aave today just to lower my cost basis. And Chainlink is probably one of my larger bags. But I'm long time Chainlink holder. I kind of learned my lesson. I got a lot of Chainlink for $2 way back in the day, but then I sold it all when it did a 2x. So I sold all my Chainlink for $4.
Oh
And I
my
thought I was a
god.
genius, man. Oh my God, I'm the world's smartest person. Obviously, I should have held it because it went all the way to $50. So I got in at 2
Oh
instead of holding the
god.
50. I sold at 4. So Chainlink, I'm a little bit once bitten, twice shy. So I didn't really sell as much Chainlink into like maybe the December pump or the March pump from 2023 that maybe I should have. I could have got in cheaper. So that's kind of what I've been accumulating.
Yeah. I think, like, back to the sort of altcoin run, I think one of the issues too is you have so many new token emissions as well. Like, you have all these, emissions from a lot of these VC-backed coins that
That's a
there's
I got
so
a hot
much new
take on that.
supply coming in. Yeah, okay, let me hear your hot take on that.
That's a good thing.
It's a good thing. You think so? Because like,
I know
I don't
so.
know.
I'm just being a weirdo.
No.
No. So here's what I would point to. I would point to ETH2s. I would also point to Solana, Ondo, the big VC chains. Guess what? L2 has like 95% of the token release, no longer in VC hands. Polygon, Matic,
Polygon, really?
and it sucks. Yeah, Polygon's been like 94% release for like 2 years now, and so that should be a good thing, right? No more selling pressure. Wrong, because a lot of these VC lockups, they're not getting all their tokens in 6 months or 12 months. A lot of the large multi-billion-dollar tokens that are launching at $400 million, they don't have 12-month lockups. They don't have 6-month lockups. If you don't know what a lockup is, you're a millionaire, Silicon Valley, and you got some crypto guys like, hey man, help invest in Say or Sui or Aptos. And they'll say, all right, here's $10 million, but I want to get in at like bargain basement prices. They're like, all right, you're getting it, at a penny a coin, or we're going to launch at 10 cents a coin. But that guy might not get those tokens for like 7 years. And so when you have Solana lockups, which are going to 2030, that were actually signed in like 2021 or 2022, like 8-year lockups, when you have an 8-year lockup, you are incentivized to make sure that that token is valuable 8 years
Actually
from
does
now.
good,
And so
yeah.
with Polygon, all the VCs have gotten their money, and guess what? No one gives a
And
crap about
out.
Polygon anymore. But if you look at Solana, you look at Ondo, you look at some of these tokens with large, long VC lockup periods, this billionaire is going to dance and sing and ha 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 ha. He's going to be a
Yeah,
Aptos cheerleader for the next 4 years, and Polygon no longer has a cheerleader. And so that's why it's actually the price is indicating it's a positive today.
you're the first person to tell me that take, and it actually makes a lot of sense. Like, once the incentive goes away, there's no longer any reason for them to keep promoting Polygon, to spread it around, to, whatever the case is.
And think about
But do you think
Solana.
it's yeah,
A Solana whale might be a board member for 5 different tech startups. And so Solana might have a major partnership with the Fit bracelet in 2027, or they might have a big partnership with Airbnb in 2028, because the Solana whale is also an initial investor in Airbnb. And so when you have these long-term incentive structures, it bodes well for the token price.
do you think at
Oh,
some point,
one
though, it's
caveat
too much
there. Sorry.
emission? I was
Just
gonna
one
say
caveat, Jason. One caveat. It only works for rich VCs. It doesn't work for brokies. It doesn't work for crowdfunding, and it doesn't work for, launching at a smaller market cap. You really need someone that's like, yeah, I got $500 million. I'm not worried about selling this $5 million in Solana today. I want to sell that 5 million for 50 million. And so it only works if the VCs are like got deep, deep
Right,
pockets. So it's
VCs.
really only for like the tokens that are launching at insanely high valuations.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because like one of the concerns I always have with it though is when the emissions are really high. Is there ever a point when you look at the tokenomics where you're like, this is too many emissions, or you'll look more so at the VCs and be like, okay, this is fine.
I used to until I started researching Polkadot and looking at their emission structure and how the dumping. And you ever see the meme that the market is priced it in? And it's like, oh, you work at McDonald's and you know they serve human meat. The market's priced it in. So the market is basically priced in all that. And so there's really not like, oh, big unlock 45 days from now. I better sell today and then buy in 45 days. Now the whales have already positioned themselves. They've already sold, and you'll notice that the token will start pumping like 2 weeks before the admissions are done.
Yeah,
Like, it doesn't even make any sense. It's because it's been priced in.
it's already been priced in. Yeah, I agree. And well, I don't want to keep you for too long. I did hear that you have a book coming.
Yeah.
Did you like what is this?
It's
Like
the rise and
what's the
fall.
rundown on the book?
The rise and fall of a crypto influencer. No, I had a backseat to that. I kid. I'm surprised you didn't ask more about that. No, I have a book that I'm gonna be releasing on Cardano via Book.io and Stuff.io, and it's gonna be a mint to print. There's a new program that they started a few weeks ago, and it's gonna be let me get let me just make sure 50 secrets of the wealthy, 50 tips to get rich. And so that's what we have dropping fairly soon.
And what do you mean mint to print? Like, you get a physical copy as well, or is it
That
all
is an
it was on?
option. That's an option. You could all do it through their platform. I actually haven't tested it myself, so I actually haven't like gone into the webpage and see what it looks like when you like hit the buttons and everything. But yeah, it's basically they have printing on demand, and they're signing a lot of big partnerships with some of these big publishers. If you're in the Cardano ecosystem, I keep an eye out on that token.
And what like made you want to make a book? Like, what made you
That's
want
a
to
good
make a
question.
book, and what can people expect in the book?
I honestly don't even know. I just started doing it. I do recall. I had a buddy who wrote a book, and I was like, you know what?
Hmm.
I think I can do that. I think I can do that. So I just started noodling around, and I don't think it was 50 initially. I think maybe I was going to do 100, and then it started. Oh man, this is actually like kind of difficult. Shrunk it down to 50, and so it took me a while just to get the 50 kernels, the 50 ideas out, and now everything is fleshed out. I just want to rewrite it, check some of the stats, etc.
Okay, what can people expect? Is it just did you just sort of research what a lot of rich people do, and kind of pick the top 50 ideas?
Yep, exactly. Timeless strategies, it's not you're not going to see like buy Cardano, but what you will see is, picks and shovels, and what is the picks and shovels strategy? Here's some classic examples. Here's where it was a great idea. I was just kind of reviewing that in a member stream. Levi Strauss is the classic example, but we've seen modern examples of the picks and shovels as well. I think TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor, they sold tons of chips to Nokia and BlackBerry. They got rich. When's the last time you seen a Nokia phone or a BlackBerry phone? And so you could have invested in BlackBerry.
True.
Oh, everyone's going to want a keyboard on their phone. Or you could have done the picks and shovels play,
Chips.
and that would have got you
Yeah.
early in NVIDIA as well.
I love it, man. Well, I'm excited for that book. Dude, I've really appreciated having you on here, learning a little bit more about your journey. To kind of wrap this up, one piece of advice you have for people listening today?
I'll
Maybe
give them tip number 50, the secret to
give
everything.
tip number 50. Do it.
The secret to everything. Are you ready for this, Jason? The secret to
Let's
everything.
do it. I'm ready. Let me get my
It's it's a simple concept, but it's difficult to execute, and it's something that most people don't even think about. If you want something, you find the price and you pay it, and it is that simple. And so if you're 18, graduate, and you want to be an NBA player, well, what is the price you would have to pay? Well, you probably need to shoot the basketball 80 hours a week, 40 hours a week. You need to be exercising. You need to get your 10,000 hours in. You need to be eating healthy. And so you would find that price and you would pay it. Me at 18, I would look at that discipline required. Like, I don't want to wake up at 5 a.m., start jogging, go to the gym, eat a protein shake. So I wouldn't want to pay that price. But if you want to be a successful businessman, all right, well, maybe you need to work 80 hours. Maybe you need to have meetings. Maybe you can't scroll TikTok during the day. If you want a six pack, guess what? Put the freaking fork down. Find out the cost, pay it. It's the secret to obtaining literally anything possible. Now, there's going to be obvious exceptions. I'm probably, if you're born outside of America, you can't be the president. I'm not going to be joining the NBA. So there's obvious, within the realm of reason, but you can obtain anything that's feasible if you just identify the cost, pay it, and it is that simple.
I love that. Do you know Alex Ramosi, I'm guessing, or
Mm-mm.
you've never seen Alex Ramosi? Wow. Dude, you should. I think you would really vibe with some of his business and entrepreneurship content, but he had said something similar that stuck with me, where a lot of people will complain when they look at someone who, let's say, is a successful business owner, and they'll be like, "Oh, he got lucky," or "Oh, blah 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 blah." But then they don't want to do the work that was required to actually be in that person's position. And I think
Yeah,
that's what you mean with the price to pay. Like,
yeah.
hey, if you want to do XYZ, you might have to work 80 hours a week. You might have to say no to seeing XYZ. So you can't necessarily be mad when someone does have that if they were willing to pay that price and you weren't. So he had brought up something pretty similar to what you just said. And I think there's a lot of truth to that.
And that works well for jealousy. You might be jealous of your neighbor because they have a nicer car than you. But then, yeah, to your point, are they going to work at 5 a.m. and coming home at 7 p.m.? When you start factoring that stuff, do they have high blood pressure? Or they look like their health is declining? When you start factoring in everything, then maybe you're not so jealous anymore.
Love it. But awesome. Thanks for coming on. Shout out to everyone that joined in too. BT, Hybrid Family. He did see number 42. You remember 42 off the top of your head?
42, I have it right here. So if I scroll down,
Okay.
42 is 50 is the secret to everything. 42 is, I'm scrolling, 44, 42. Anticipation is the oxygen of an asset. And that's buy the rumor, sell the news encapsulated.
Perfect. That's the alpha for you guys. Well, once again, thank you everyone for listening. Deezy, it was a pleasure. Go have some lunch, man. And yeah, I'll catch y'all tomorrow. Have a good